So this one is for my early intervention therapists out there. And I'm sure most, if not all of you, can relate. But have you ever been a part of a session where the parent just kind of sits on their phone the whole time while you treat the child? Or maybe you feel like you're doing everything and the parent just looks at you as if you're like a glorified babysitter. Or maybe you feel like you have to do everything because maybe that's just what the parents expect. As an early intervention therapist, one of the most valuable parts of our jobs is parent coaching. But it can be very intimidating or it can be very uncomfortable, especially if you're brand new to EI or if you're more of an introverted therapist, or even if you came from a different type of setting. So in this video, I'm going to be talking you through a few tips on how you can confidently coach parents without you feeling like you have to do everything all on your own. First of all, we have to shift our mindset. You need to know and understand that your job is not to fix anybody's child. You are simply there to support and guide that family and support and guide that parent on how they can best support and guide their child. Your job is to equip the parent enough so that they can actually work on skill building with their child at home. Every moment that you spend coaching is going to be way more effective than you just doing everything for the parent, because if they can truly understand what you're telling them to do and how to do it, and they even have a good grasp on how to carry it over, even when you're not around, that is going to be the most effective type of sessions for that child. Because remember, therapy only works long term if it's embedded into that family's natural daily routines and if that family is actually carrying over those strategies into their natural daily routines. So when it comes to shifting your mindset, I want you to think about these 3 steps: guide, model, step back. That's it. You make it so hard, but it's really that simple if you follow through with that, right? You guide them through what it is that they're supposed to do or what you're recommending them to do. You model it, so you show them how to do it. And then you take a step back, right? You make sure they understand what it is that you're teaching them, why you're teaching them, and how you're teaching them, right? You can even ask them to return demonstration so you know exactly whether or not they truly understand what you're teaching them and guiding them to do. Remember, your role is to empower the families, not to perform for the family. So to get your families more involved and more engaged, you want to break that cycle of going into the session and immediately sitting down with that child and getting to work. You always want to start your session with that parent-focused intent, right? So what I mean by that is when you come into a session, you want to start it off focusing completely on that parent, right? You want to sit down with them and talk to them. Have a conversation with them before just diving right into therapy, right? So you can ask them a few questions like, what's one thing you want to focus on for today? What was the most difficult or what was the most challenging thing for you over this past week? Or let's say you gave them a strategy or a recommendation to do last week. You can follow up and ask them that. Hey, how did it go last week when you put little Susie in the bathtub, right? How did she respond? How does she react? Did you get to try this new skill that we worked on last week? So you are immediately putting the ball in their court when you're walking into their home and starting the session. This immediately puts parents in the driver's seat, and immediately it positions them to know and understand that their participation actually does matter. When parents feel more understanding and more ownership of what it is that you're trying to get them to do with their child, naturally that engagement will start to increase, especially if the parent starts to see small little wins or small little episodes of progress on behalf of something that they have been doing with their child versus you as a therapist always doing the thing that shows progress with their child. Now let's get a little bit more into some practical coaching strategies. Number 1 is guided participation. So basically, this is the parent being hands-on with whatever activity or whatever strategy that you're doing, right? You are literally coaching the parent and telling them what to do or how to do it or how to position the child or what to say, right? How to engage with the child. You are guiding them while they are actively doing the thing, right? So you're coaching them live is what I call it, right? You're in there. It's like they have a little microphone in their ear. They're doing the thing, but they're listening to you as you coach them through what it is that they should do. Another practical coaching strategy is to provide visual tools for the parents. This could be things like a handout. This could be cheat sheets. This could be a video. The power of visuals is so huge because you can probably tell a parent one thing and it may go in one ear and out the other because that parent's brain is like, just like all of our brains are, all over the place because we're just thinking about so many things all the time. But if you accompany that auditory piece with that verbal piece and the visual piece, right? 9 times out of 10, the parent is more likely to retain what you're telling them because they heard you say it, right? They saw what you meant, right? And now they are able to act on it. Remember, when you're teaching these parents, you also want to hit on all of their sensory systems as much as possible to help them retain information as well. Another practical coaching strategy is to just give parents one small action step a week. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of therapists make, especially new therapists, is that you want to prove yourself, right? You want to show up and you want to be like, I'm the expert, I'm the OT or the speech therapist, right? I know all things, right? And so you want to make sure that you show up and you prove yourself to these parents. But you may be doing yourself a disservice, right? Because if you show up to this session and you just spiel off a bunch of things that you want this family to try, sometimes you may have a family that's able to do that, but typically that's not very common, right? What typically works best is if you give the family one small action step for that week. And this should be an action step that naturally embeds into that child's and that family's daily routines, okay? So you don't always want to go in with 5 things to do. Just try one thing for that week. And you know what? When you come back next week, you may recommend them doing that same thing for this week. You do not have to change up what you're instructing the family to do every single week because sometimes repetition is key and sometimes that family needs to do that same thing maybe for 2 weeks or 3 weeks in a row before it finally clicks, okay? So make sure you're keeping things small and actionable and easy to implement. The 4th practical coaching strategy is gentle re-engagement. So by this, I mean you're using your verbal cues, verbal responses to gently re-engage the family into your session. So you can say something like, oh, I noticed how much little Susie lights up when you join in. How about we try this together? Another way that you can word things is like, can I ask you what's most challenging about this activity for you? Or how about we try this thing together? Let me see how you feel. Or what are your thoughts on if we tried this? So these are just all little, very simple, subtle little verbal cues that you can give to parents to let them know like, hey, I'm not in this on my own. I need your help and your participation as well. And probably one of the most important practical coaching strategies is parental praise, right? You want to praise them when they are making an effort. Even if it's not perfect, right? Even if it's not perfectly demonstrated how you just did it, you want to acknowledge the fact that they're even trying, right? And you want to acknowledge all wins, even the very small ones. If a family comes back and reports to you like, hey, you know what? I did my best to try it, but such and such got in the way. You know what? Let's applaud that because at least you thought about what I asked you to do over the week or what I recommended that you try over the week, right? Maybe this week we can figure out how to modify it a little bit so that it becomes more natural for your routine. So you're constantly always figuring out ways to work with the family, not against the family and what they have going on. But there are just a few tips that I highly advise you do no matter what, right? Especially if you have a family that's showing low engagement. Number 1, document, right? Document all of your coaching attempts. Every time you taught a parent something, every time you educated them on something, every time you demonstrated something, every time you recommend that they carry over something, every time they come back to you and say that they did not do it yet, they didn't do it yet, they haven't tried it yet, Make sure you document all of that, because it's not necessarily that you want to point the finger, but you want to showcase that, hey, I'm showing up, I'm doing my part, but I can't do this on my own because I'm only here once a week, and this mom or dad or whoever that caregiver is, they're with this child the rest of the time. And so if they're not carrying over any strategies or any of these recommendations, right, like, it can't all be on me. So you just want to make sure you're documenting everything so that you have proof that you have been attempting to coach these parents, but they have not been as receptive in returning or carrying over the strategies that you are providing. And to go along with that, you may want to start modifying how you handle things, right? So instead of giving a parent a directive, like, do this, try this, you can ask them questions like, hey, what do you think will work best for you and your family? Do you think it would be better if you tried this over the week or tried that? Or what's your time frame like, right? How much time do you have this week to try something? Oh, you only have 5 minutes? Okay, perfect. Well, with the 5 minutes that you have, how about you try this? Or what do you think about if you tried this? So it's more so about offering the family and the parent choices to make sure that it naturally embeds with what they have going on, versus you just giving them stuff to do and they're just like, girl, I ain't got time to do all that, right? Okay, so make sure you are providing choices, because that's going to help the family buy in a little bit more if they feel like they have a say-so in what it is that you would like them to try. The third thing I want you to realize is maybe you need to adjust your expectations, right? Not every family has the goal that you think they should have, right? I'll give you a very quick example. So there was once a family that I was working with, and based off the written goal, we were working on that child using utensils. But when I really got to know the family, I came to understand that due to cultural reasons, they did not really care to work on using utensils, right? Because that just, within their culture, they ate more so with their hands. And so I'm like, okay, well, now I understand the disconnect behind why it is that working on utensils is not as important for this family. So you may need to adjust your expectations and figure out, like, hey, is this something that the family truly wants, right? Because sometimes families don't want mastery of a skill. Sometimes they just want awareness. Sometimes they just want a better understanding. So make sure you truly tap into what is motivating for this family to truly work on. Now, I'm gonna be the one to say it, right? Maybe you are doing everything in your power. Maybe you have done all the scripts. You have done everything you know to do in your power to bring them into the session, and they're just still not involved. They're still low engagement. Sometimes you may have to have a hard conversation with the family and just say, hey, you know what? I know we've been working at this for the past 6 months now, and I'm just not seeing progress. And I know, you've been telling me you've been having a really hard time with carrying things over. I'm almost starting to wonder, do you feel like therapy is right for you at this time? Or do you feel like you need a break from therapy? Or what are your thoughts on if we reduce the frequency of therapy? Do you feel like that would give you more time to carry over some of these strategies if we went down to maybe twice a month instead of every single week? So you may need to start discussing these different options. And unfortunately, sometimes discharge may be the last route we want to go, but sometimes it's the route that we may have to go, especially if you've done all that you can. Maybe you've even collaborated with other therapists on the team. They're having that same exact experience. Maybe you've talked to the child and the family's service coordinator, and it just seems like nothing is giving, right? The child is just at a standstill because the parents have a lack of carryover for whatever reason. Okay, and you're doing everything you can. And I know a lot of us as therapists, we want to stay on the case because we're like, hey, if it's not for us being on this case, this poor baby is not going to get any service at all. But I know there's another group of us that are like, well, you know what? I'm not coming here every week for nothing, right? I have to do my part, but I expect the parent to do their part too. And if you're feeling that way, then I honestly don't think it's anything wrong with discharging. And maybe you can just tell the parent, like, maybe you would be a better fit, or this child would be another fit with another therapist. So there are options. You do not have to stay stuck with the family for years if you feel like the parent is just not buying in. Because like I said, sometimes parents are just mentally checked out, and as much as they would like therapy, maybe right now is just not the best time for them. So if you're feeling that way, I highly recommend that you talk to that family's coordinator and see what the best route would be to go for this particular family. If you want a quick practical tool to start coaching parents right away, I created a parent coaching starter kit for new therapists in early intervention. It includes cheat sheets, scripts, and more. So if you want a copy of that, make sure you grab it. I'll link it in the description box below. And if this video was helpful, make sure you subscribe and share it to another OT or another speech therapist or another early intervention therapist out there who could use some more practical tips on working with kiddos in the early intervention program. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, bye.